Okay, bonjour and hello. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Tanya McCagerty, she, her pronouns from Away Home Canada. I hold the role of training and program design specializing in school-based interventions and system collaboration along with change management. I'd like to start our time together by acknowledging the land that we are on today. I recognize that we're coming from all different parts of the world. So for yourself, if you wouldn't mind taking a second and putting in the chat which territory you're joining from today, that would be kind. For myself, I'm grateful to work and live on the lands of Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta. This includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina Nation, and the Ithka Stoney Nakoda mountain lands. Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. I offer this acknowledgement with respect and with a commitment to continue learning and reflecting on the role we all have in supporting reconciliation. Thank you for putting that in the chat. I really appreciate it. It's always a great way to know where everyone's joining us from. I'd also like to introduce my colleagues here today. Joining us is Karen Bosworth from the Canadian Observatory on Homelessness. You'll hear from Karen a little bit later, as well as Dr. Stephen Gaetz and Melanie Redman. Stephen and Melanie will begin with a presentation on Prevention 101. Following that presentation, Karen and I will share the new Community Entity Prevention Toolkit with you, and then we'll shift to a Q&A. So please feel free to take notes of your questions throughout our time together, or you can use the Q&A chat button down below. If you don't see it, you can click on more and it should be in there. And we'll monitor that to answer all your questions as we go through. And of course, if you want to connect with any of your colleagues here, we invite you to put your name, organization in the chat. A good quality webinar means you found someone that is doing work that resonates with you, or you found that person you've been meaning to connect with and haven't had capacity to do so. So glad you could do that during our webinar today. So let me pass it over to Stephen and Melanie to begin the presentation on Prevention 101.
Steph is going to run the slides for us. Thank you so much. I'd like to start by thanking the Government of Canada's Reaching Home program for funding this important work to develop the toolkit in collaboration with community entities. I also want to thank the pilot community entities that helped us really deep dive and develop this toolkit, Durham Region and Regina, and all of the participating community entities. And Tanya will give them a shout out later. I also want to thank the Canadian Observatory on Homelessness team and the Away Home teams for all of your Herculean work to get this to the finish line. It was a true, deep, rich, wonderful collaboration. Steve?
Great, thanks. Steph, can you put on the slides? There we go. Okay, so we're going to talk for about half an hour, which is record for me in terms of shortness. But anyway, we really want to give you an overview of prevention and why it matters for community entities. But first, let's go to who we are. Melanie, Steph, can you move to the next one? There we go.
I am very fortunate to lead the Away Home Canada Coalition. And for those of you who may not know us, we work on solutions to youth homelessness, really focusing on prevention. And we work to transform policy, practice, and community-based systems planning. We have a network of service providers across Canada called the National Learning Community on Youth Homelessness. And we have been very fortunate to support other jurisdictions around the world to launch their own Away Home style coalitions. Steve?
Great. So I'm a professor at York University in Toronto, and I lead the Canadian Observatory on Homelessness. And so our business is to conduct and mobilize research designed to have an impact on solutions to homelessness. So next. So we're going to start by addressing the question, why should we care about youth homelessness prevention? It's one thing to think about prevention, but what about the prioritization of youth? So I'm going to share some data to get us going, and then we'll move forward. So in Canada, this is data from Government of Canada. Youth experiencing homelessness make up about 11.9% or 12% of the shelter population in Canada. They also make up about the same percentage for as a part of the general population. But that number is likely an undercount, and here's why. Next, Government Canada's data, they put this out about a year ago, and it shocked me that they looked at 449 Canadian communities that have some kind of homelessness services, and only 17% had youth programming, which is shocking. So it's something that is not that present. Where there is programming, it often starts at 16 or 18 or even 21. So there's a whole lot of young people who are being underserved there. And we have to think about that going forward. And one of the important things to consider when people tell you that there's no youth homelessness in their community is that when there's no infrastructure, we're not counting. And with no counting and no numbers, we render the issue invisible. So it's important to understand that so many people are in a tough situation that aren't getting served. Next. This is what a key piece of research we did, a survey with about 1,200 young people who are homeless in Canada. And one of the questions we asked is, how old were you when you first experienced homelessness? And 40% said their first experience was before they were 16. And the characteristics of that group are completely different from those who had later experiences at 16 or up. On the side here, you can see multiple episodes of homelessness, involvement with child protection, tested for learning disabilities, experiencing bullying, mental health problems, more suicidal ideation. And so that's a group of young people there's a lot of complexity there. And in most jurisdictions, we do nothing for them. This is not typically a child protection mandate. What it means, though, is that these young people can be caught up and be trafficked at a young age, or they wind up having to go into adult shelters, or they go underground. And then we don't know what's going on with them. Next. In Canada, about 0.8%, Steph and I were updating this data the other day, about 0.8% of young people in Canada have had some involvement with child protection. Amongst youth who are homeless, it's 58%, with 47% having been apprehended. Next. Mental health and well-being, 85.4% of the sample were in the high symptom distress category, which meant that if they were housed, they would either be in inpatient or outpatient care. Next. Now, here's where we get into some of the compelling reasons, right? So just what you've heard so far suggests we have a population with unique needs. The causes of youth homelessness are distinct from adult homelessness, so much be the solutions. But why focus on the prevention at that age? Why is that important? Well, in Canada, with our point in time count in the 2018, and this has been replicated in the most recent one as well, about 50% of people who are currently homeless of all ages had their first experience before the age of 25. Let's go to the next slide. And so this is one of my favorite pieces of data. It plots the age of first experience of homelessness. And if you look to the left of the screen, you can see a big spike. What it shows is that most people who experience homelessness, the peak years of first experience are teen years, mainly between 12 and 20. That's a big deal. Next slide. And so here's what we do. So for those who left home before the age of 16, we don't do anything until they get older and sicker. Between 16 and 24, we offer up crisis response. And then as they get older, it's going to be chronic homelessness. And so the thing that we think that's really key, why youth homelessness prevention, that's where homelessness starts. And if we did a good job of preventing young people from becoming homeless, not only would we produce better outcomes for them, for their families and their communities, we'd also have a big impact on chronic homelessness. Next slide. Because in Canada, we estimate that within the youth homeless population, this is Government of Canada stats, about 58% of the population is chronically homeless. They're young and already chronically homeless. So this is where we should focus our efforts. Next slide. Okay, defining homelessness prevention. If we're going to talk about prevention, we need a definition. And so this is the one that we've developed and been working on for several years, and it's based on the public health model. So primary prevention in public health means doing things to make sure people don't get sick. So vaccines, that kind of thing. Secondary prevention here. So that in terms of preventing homelessness, that means early intervention, getting at it before things get really bad. Secondary prevention means intervening early once people have experienced homelessness, but give them the supports so that they transition out of homelessness and not into chronic homelessness. So that secondary prevention one really kind of calls on the crisis response to think differently, right? Rather than think about intake, how can we help a young person not become homeless? And then tertiary prevention is providing supports to help people who experience homelessness exit, but with the right supports, and this is really key, the right supports appropriate for developing adolescents and young adults that will reduce the likelihood that they return to homelessness. Next, when we talk about prevention, we have to talk about what it is, but also what it isn't. So, there's lots of good things that happen in the, homelessness sector. Young people can get life skills training and, how to cook, these kinds of things. And these are all really important, but they're not preventing homelessness if the person is still homeless after the intervention. Homelessness prevention has to involve a housing stabilization piece. Otherwise, it's not prevention. Next. Also, we need to take account of homelessness and prevention amongst Indigenous people. And one of the things that I think is really amazing in Canada is how many interesting and effective preventive programs there are for young people who are Indigenous. These are Indigenous-led programs that really are seated in culture and reconnection. So this is good news. It's bad news that there are so many young people who are Indigenous who are homeless. Next slide. And then we have the definition, but we also have a typology. I won't go into the details on this, but this is where you get into the details of like who's responsible for the prevention of youth homelessness, because our belief is it isn't just the homelessness sector, and it can't be. There are the public systems that have to be involved, child protection, healthcare, criminal justice, education, that kind of thing. And so it's important to think about that, and there's lots of good information about these things. Next. Okay, I'm going to hand this over to Melanie now, who's going to talk about solving problems through social innovation. Next.
Yeah, so starting in 2013, we were working with a set number of communities across Canada to develop strategies to prevent and end youth homelessness. And even with all the brightest folks around the table, including Dr. Gaetz and others, we had more questions about prevention than we had answers, to be honest. And, what does prevention look like in terms of, practical interventions on the ground, public policy that enables it, all of the things that need to be in place. What are the other systems players that need to be at the table? So what we did is we co-created a national youth homelessness prevention research agenda between researchers, policymakers, young people with lived experience, service providers. We started checking off the list one by one. First, we started with the National Without a Home study to understand the scope of the problem, the causes and conditions. And then we continued to build out this agenda, and we launched the Making the Shift Youth Homelessness Social Innovation Lab as a result. Next slide. One of the things that we often hear is that there's no evidence for prevention. And, unfortunately, there's not a lot of evidence for most of the things that we do in the space of addressing homelessness. And so we decided to tackle that head on. And through some funding from the Research Tri-Council for the Networks of Centers of Excellence program with the Government of Canada, we were able to fund 39 original research projects on prevention and sustained exits from homelessness across Canadian universities and community partners to build the evidence for prevention. Steph can drop into the chat a link to where you can find the plain language summaries, the results of all of that research. But all of the research points in the same direction, that you get better outcomes from prevention. Next slide. In addition, we did practical demonstration projects on the ground with community partners in communities across Canada. And these models, it was fantastic because we were working on the ground, training and supporting community partners to do these interventions. But at the same time, we were doing research and evaluation and working side by side with the teams to strengthen the models in real time based on what we were learning. And that's a pretty challenging thing to do. But what we were reaching for were outcomes beyond just whether or not a young person is stably housed. We want more outcomes for young people and their families, things like well-being, attachment to education, training, and employment, social inclusion. So these were the kinds of outcomes we were looking for on top of housing stability. Next, Steve.
Great. So I'm going to very quickly go over 4 of the demonstration projects. This isn't all the programs that are available around prevention. It's just the 4 that we did our research on and that they matter to us. So let's go to the next slide. The first 2 here have to do with school-based early intervention. So one is Reconnect, that began in Australia, and in Canada, in the Niagara region is where the first program that was similar to that, where you have community organizations partner with schools, right? So it's not asking schools to solve homelessness, but partner with schools to focus on attachment to education, student success, well-being, all the things that schools care about, but also to identify young people who are at risk of homelessness or have experienced it, and to come in with supports for not just for the young person, but also for their family. And so Upstream, which is also first developed in Australia, takes it a bit further. What they do is they'll go into middle schools and do a screener. So do a short survey with all the students in grades 6, 7, 8. And from there, they can determine who's struggling. And that's important because while teachers and coaches may identify some people who they think are homeless in the school, many young people do not show up as having problems. It's invisible because they're doubling down school's their safe place. So Upstream allows us to get to those. Next. Housing First for Youth is adaptation of that model. Housing First model, we've developed this in Canada, and it's built around the needs of developing adolescents and young adults. It's got great core principles, different housing options that are more appropriate for youth, bearing in mind that in Canada, living with your family is normative for teenagers and people in their 20s. So this was one that we've tested. This is one we're very happy with. We need more of these going forward. This is an intervention that in Reaching Home, Government of Canada's homelessness strategy, and their directives that they point out as one. Okay, next. Family and natural supports. This is one that's really important. And in the homelessness sector, historically, family is often treated as part of the problem, and we often block them. And what we've found is that young people experiencing homelessness generally want more connection with family, and they want to repair if there are damaged relationships. It doesn't mean putting someone in harm's way to force them to go back to a household where there's abuse or neglect, but it does mean helping build the networks and the strong relationships with the family, and learning, how about emotional regulation and communications and anger management, not just for the young person, but for their family members. And natural supports are meaningful adults in young person's life. Could be a teacher, could be a coach, it could be your best friend's parents, that kind of thing. All young people thrive when they have natural supports. They're portable, they don't go away. As professional supports do. So the key thing that we've learned with family and natural supports is that everything we do with young people, this should be offered up as an option to develop and strengthen that. It's the engine that drives the school-based interventions, case management, and Housing First for Youth. So let's go to the next slide and talk a bit about the research outcomes. We've done a lot of research, could do a whole presentation on just the Housing First for Youth. And so we've done this with all of our interventions. And so one of the things we did with the Housing First for Youth program, demonstration projects, we did a randomized control trial. So half the youth got Housing First for Youth and the other half got treatment as usual, which might mean they were in another housing program or in a shelter or receiving other kinds of services, but they weren't getting Housing First for Youth. And the results when they came out, I have to say, shocked me because, like, here's the thing. It's when you do research like this, it's not necessarily guaranteed that you're going to have good results, but we absolutely did here. So young people who were in the Housing First for Youth stream had enhanced housing stability. They had improvements in physical and mental health. Did not predict that. Improved resilience, improved money management, declines in criminal involvement and drug use, and improved relationships with family, friends, and significant others. So it's very exciting work. Next slide. Mindful of the time here. Okay, is youth homelessness prevention cost effective? So we've released this recently. Next slide. Some research that we did looking at comparing the cost of a Housing First for Youth program per young person and family and natural supports and measuring that against the crisis response. And as you can see at the bottom, that's the preventive interventions. Housing First for Youth costs about $20,000 a year to support the young person. Family and natural supports about $13,000. But compare upward. What does a year stay at emergency shelter cost on average? What about group homes? $114,000. Or staying in prison? That's the most expensive bed next to health care. And so what we can see is that not only, go next slide, not only, that it's, preventing youth homelessness is not only the right thing to do, it's cost effective. And just think about the long-term impact of this when young people don't fall into chronic homelessness and don't wind up very sick. So it's important to understand that this is a good thing to do and it's not just a fluffy thing. Should be the core of our approach. Okay, next slide. Supporting the shift to prevention. So what do we need to have in place to make this happen? Next slide. One of the things we know from our research in Canada is that the youth homelessness sector is ready for prevention. We did a survey 2023 maybe, survey of over 150 service providers who all identified that prevention is necessary to solve youth homelessness. And so the sector also identified what gets in the way, right? And so they feel that they need more support as an organization. They need the communities and community entities to be there and be supportive. They also feel that there needs to be dedicated funds because otherwise you're in a situation where there's an opportunity cost. To do prevention means you have to stop doing something else. And they could do more if they had quality training and technical assistance. Next slide. The other thing is that there are lots of other assets to help us get there. The evidence base for prevention exists and continues to grow. The case for focusing on youth homelessness prevention is compelling. Government of Canada, which is great, supports investment in the prevention of youth homelessness. And there's certainly growing interest in the support for prevention of youth homelessness by community entities. And the project that Tanya was talking about showed just how great it is to see the community entities working with service providers and others to move things forward. Next slide. Here's a list of kinds of things that Away Home Canada and the Canadian Observatory offer up. It's resources, presentations, the Homelessness Learning Hub, and research. Next slide. Melanie, over to you to say anything about training and technical assistance because Away Home Canada is a leader on this.
Well, we didn't start out to become a clearinghouse for training and technical assistance. It happened along the way because as we were supporting the demonstration projects, we realized that communities, in order to implement the preventive interventions, needed a lot of training and ongoing technical assistance. And so we started to build that capacity by bringing in outside experts. And later we decided that we would just start bringing those people in-house because the demand was so great. And now we're really fortunate to have even Indigenous-led training and technical assistance. in-house. And so basically what we do is we do a lot of grant funding to support as many communities as possible with free training and supports. And then sometimes we do fee-for-service work when communities have the ability to underwrite some of those services. But yeah, but there's a ton of free stuff, online training and resources that we've collaborated on with the Canadian Observatory on Homelessness at the Homelessness Learning Hub. And I'll turn it back over, I guess, to Tanya and Karen to talk about the toolkit.
I'll just say one last thing.
Sure.
The good news is we know what to do, right? We don't fall apart because there's no evidence. We know what to do. We have the skills out there. People are adopting it. You can do it as well if you're not. Next, yeah, back over to Tanya now.
Thank you both. And I did see in the chat a few questions around receiving the slides. Again, you'll receive the recording.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You'll receive the recording in full. And thanks, Steve. You were moving right through those. So I'm sure a few folks will want to go back and look at some of those slides a little more in depth. So thank you. The toolkit overview that Karen and I would like to share with you, just a little bit about our project. Again, with Away Home Canada and COH, we were granted the opportunity from Reaching Home to work with 10 community entities across Canada to deliver knowledge, training, and supports to build their capacity as well as their service providers, mostly their youth serving organizations, to deliver youth homelessness prevention interventions. A few of our key objectives over the last 18 months were to deliver an in-person training in each one of these communities. So what Melanie was just speaking to, we had the opportunity to go into communities, get to know them a little bit better, and share a 2-day training in Family and Natural Supports Foundations 101 or Housing First for Youth. We also did a community of practice for these 10 communities so they could spend more time learning from each other and just creating more connection across the nation. And of course, the toolkit. We worked to build the toolkit again for their awareness as well as the awareness of the organizations that they support. And of course, we collected data from the CEs along the way. We got their feedback and learnings. I'm happy to share, as Melanie already mentioned, we worked closely with 2 CEs, Neverend in Regina, Saskatchewan, and Durham County in Ontario, who spent time going through our toolkit and making sure we had all the necessary pieces in the right spot. We also had 8 other partners join us, Central Okanagan, United Way Kingston, City of Ottawa, City of Grand Prairie, and Homelessness St. John's, City of Greater Sudbury, County of Wellington, and the Human Development Council out of New Brunswick. All these folks had a consultation on the toolkit, spoke into the prototype, and again, provided the feedback to what we're going to share with you today. It was also reassuring what Steve shared in that initial survey around what the challenges were. CEs told us in these consultations their top challenges were in youth homelessness prevention, and it was that lack shared of understanding of what youth homelessness prevention is, the insufficient funding dedicated to prevention, and a lack of prioritization or infrastructure in this place, plus limited training and technical assistance. So the toolkit brings key resources, tools, and implementation support together in one place, making it useful for communities that are just getting started, as well as those of you that are looking to strengthen or refine any of your existing prevention efforts. And be rest assured that as new evidence and promising practices, we will continue to update this toolkit. So be sure to bookmark it as a resource for yourself. The toolkit brings together everything a CE and a community needs to lead a prevention-focused response. And we heard many times, there's a lot of resources. If you visited our homeless hub or our homeless learning hub, there's a lot of pieces in this. So our hope for you is that this toolkit will put those pieces all in one spot for you. We believe that it's a resource designed to be practical, flexible, and usable in a real-world community setting. So I'm going to pass it over to Karen for the big reveal and to walk you through where you can find these resources.
Thanks, Tanya. Hi, everybody. My name is Karen Bosworth, and I'm with the Communications and Knowledge Mobilization team at the Canadian Observatory on Homelessness. And Tanya and I worked together along with our community entity partners to develop this toolkit. I'm going to share my screen, but before and walk you through so you can, I know you want to see it. We've been teasing it for long enough, but I'm going to do a live walkthrough of it. But just before I do that, I want to share with you a quick video, which will give you just an overview of how this, of how you can use the video, of how you can use the toolkit, sorry. All right, so I see that's working. 1 second. Sorry. Here we go.
As the community entity, you lead your community's homelessness plan, working with local partners to set priorities, manage funds, and deliver cost-effective solutions. The Youth Homelessness Prevention Toolkit supports that work by helping you and your partners plan coordinated upstream responses. The toolkit brings together evidence, examples, and planning tools to help strengthen collaboration, set shared priorities, and put effective prevention strategies in place. In it, you'll find definitions, key concepts, planning tools, guides, and training. Youth homelessness is a growing yet preventable challenge. Communities with coordinated prevention plans are making real progress to improve outcomes for young people and reduce chronic homelessness. Use the toolkit at any stage of planning, setting priorities, developing a community response, or coordinating with service partners. Spark meaningful conversations to help shape a shared approach to prevention. The toolkit is easy to navigate so you can find what you need fast. Just scan the contents and jump to a section. Links take you straight to the resource, and download buttons make it easy to save them for later. Use the toolkit as part of your daily work. Start with the overview to build a shared understanding of key concepts and definitions. Planning a meeting, share a fact sheet to help your team set goals and map next steps. Working across sectors, use outcomes data and infographics to highlight evidence and align priorities. Free training, webinars, and program guides help everyone clarify roles and stay consistent. E-learning modules are self-paced and free to access, ideal for onboarding or staff development. Find the toolkit on the Homelessness Learning Hub. Make it your go-to resource for prevention-focused strategies to prevent and end homelessness in your community.
Okay, and now we're going to take a look at the toolkit itself. And there we go. So hopefully you're seeing that now. We're seeing that, yeah. So that video, just so you know, is also on the page itself. We're now on the Homelessness Learning Hub, as it mentioned in the video. The reason for the video is just you might send this page to somebody and they may not open it right away and they may forget what the heck it is. So we wanted to give people a sense when they land here of what they can do with it and what this is for. I'm going to just rearrange a couple of things on my screen so I can, there we go. So when we talked with our community entities, the ones that we met with, we heard two really important things. You need high quality resources and you need to make it easy to find them. So we know we have all those resources. We have thousands and thousands, and we have a smaller number of really key reports that we share all the time. But you need to find them quickly. You need to be able to access them and get your hands on them. So that's what this toolkit is all about. And you can see here, if you have a look at the table of contents at the top, there's a list of key, these are all the main sections. This is all on one page, what you're going to find here. And so you can scroll through and I will show you the page. You can scroll down, or you could use any of these links to jump straight to that section. I'm going to just scroll. I'm going to scroll slowly so I don't give anybody any kind of vertigo. at the top here, what we've done is we've added some of the key data points and persuasive arguments that are basically your foundational ideas that you need to share when you're talking with your partners or funders. You just want to get somebody up to speed quickly. Here's your go-to where you can find that information. But of course, you can take a deeper dive into any of these resources. For example, we created this fact sheet. I didn't create it. And I'm just going to switch windows here so you can see it in a bigger view. This fact sheet has lots of the same information, but it also has more details as well, more information about the key interventions, and then of course all of our references and other reports that you can access for further information if you're interested. This is easy to send a link to somebody. You can download it as well. You could print it if you so desire. And so that's one example. If you scroll down a little further, we've got some more information about a lot of the information, frankly, that Steve has already talked about, why youth homelessness is different from adult homelessness and why we need a different response. And then if we go a little bit farther, here's where you can go and access, if you're looking for those full reports, you're looking for that without a home survey or the roadmap, which gives you the typology of homelessness prevention that Steve mentioned, as well as some definitions. So you can continue. And if I could click on that, I'll just show you. For example, these pages link out to our other site, which is the Homeless Hub. You can come here, you can download the full report or a summary infographic. I should also mention all of these resources are available in French as well, including the toolkit. There's a button up in the top. You can click French and you'll be taken to the French version of this site. So then now let me just keep on going a little bit further. We have the definitions and core principles of youth homelessness prevention. One of the sections, I'm just going to jump here, that's of particular interest and relevance to community entities is this section on community systems planning. This is where you're going to find those outcome reports and data, and as well as we've wanted to highlight that we have Reaching Home, all of those resources that they provide are also on the Homelessness Learning Hub. So you're looking for information on coordinated access, HIFIS, or point in time counts. The learning materials in particular, they're here. Now, Steve mentioned key interventions. We have a section here, let me just scroll up a bit, with a fantastic infographic explaining how these interventions work together, what their focus is, pardon me. And then you can click on the links below to see some of those MTS programs and some from other partners. You can go, and I'm just going to click over here. If you click on it, again, you'll be taken back to the Homeless Hub to find that full program model guide available here. So you can download that. Let me just go back to where I was. So they're all here. We've got all the ones that we have so far. And again, Tanya mentioned as more come online, we can definitely add them to the page so you know that these are always up to date. Let me just show you one more. I've got, this is I've opened up the upstream guide here, and you can have a, oops, sorry, I'm going too fast. I just wanted to show you there's a bit of a lag here. So you can see the contents of the guide. The guides give you a lot of good information around that background and the evidence base for youth prevention as well. So they're fantastic resources. Let me just see here. So then the next section I wanted to highlight for you is the e-learning modules. For most of the key interventions, we have free online training, self-paced training. So this is great for onboarding new staff or for programs, say, for example, if you've got programs in your community that are all delivering the Housing First Housing First for Youth program, pardon me. We actually have 3 different modules on that program. So when you click on this, all that's required, it's free. All that's required is that you sign up for a free account with the Homelessness Learning Hub, and then you can access the training. And I've got the Reconnect training open here. Sorry, I scroll down. So this is what you'll find when you get here. Everyone that takes this training, that completes the training, gets a certificate of completion, which is helpful for tracking who's done the training. They take, on average, about 2 to 3 hours to complete. They are self-paced, so people may take more or less time. Programs or departments can decide to have a whole staff group go through the training together. That's another great suggestion. And then you can see they're not too heavy. With this is what a training looks like. It's that's the full lesson is that that's one lesson, and then you can jump to somewhere else and see something else. They're pretty short and to the point, with activities and quizzes as well. I'm going to jump back to the main page and continue scrolling down. You can be reminded about Tanya mentioned, earlier we were talking about the training and technical assistance. This is information about that at the bottom. I'm going to just quickly go back up to the top. So there's lots more here. You'll find yourself as you dive into it. We've collected everything on one page, but there are many resources connected to this. So as you have time to explore it, you will hopefully find things that you really can use in your day-to-day work. I'm going to put the link in the chat so you can have it, but I'm sure that will be available as well for follow-up, in the follow-up messaging around their toolkit. So that's my part of the presentation. Turn it back to you, Tanya.
Thank you, Karen. And thank you for your comments around, is this only available in Canada? It's available for everyone. So thank you for joining us. And we'd love to hear how transferable this is in your context, not only just in Canada, but whoever happens to use it. We're always happy to learn from you. As Karen mentioned, we didn't develop, and Steve and Melanie, we didn't develop any of these tools based just on our own knowledge. So we always need to be learning from you as well, and on what needs to be updated. So thank you. As well as the e-learning tools, I do want to stress that we are here for you as you download these or you have questions. As you can realize, there's lots of information in there. We've done our best to go through those sections and say, start up here if you're looking for definitions, and you can find your way into all the research. So if you end up getting maybe a little bit lost, or where should I start, do not hesitate to reach out. That is the goal of Away Home and the COH, to support you in this work. So let us know your questions, reach out anytime, what's working for you, what isn't, and what you'd love to learn more about or receive more training on. That's it for me. I think we're going to move to Q&A. So if anyone has any questions about the presentation or the toolkit, we'd love to hear from you. Sorry, Steph, did you have any questions come through? I don't.
So far, no questions through the Q&A.
I expect it's probably transferable for seniors that are unhoused, living in cars and estranged from their family.
Absolutely. I saw someone post in the comments that they're working on a big project over in Bloomfield. It's very close to where I live, so that's fantastic.
And I think the important thing to consider, like if you're thinking about seniors and their experiences of homelessness, we know that in Canada, that's a group that is growing in numbers. And I think a lot of the thinking that underlies like why don't we focus on preventing youth homelessness can apply to other subpopulations, definitely. Like our goal with seniors, number one goal should be to make sure they don't become homeless, right? And like, what do we need to do to make that happen? Whether it's evictions prevention or connecting people to supports or enhancing their connections to family. So we need to do more prevention across all subpopulations of homelessness. While here we're making the case that the long-term impact of doing youth homelessness prevention on the problem of homelessness suggests that we should be doing more of this. It's too late to say we should have been doing it, but the future allows us to move in this direction.
Steph, I see some questions.
Some questions coming in here in the chat. Oh, and in the Q&A. Okay, this is great. Suzanne asks, where should we start and how do we know which approach we need to prioritize between the 4 projects?
Oh, that's a good one. So the team, how did you come across what to do? That question of prioritization, that should come through community engagement, right? Like the community should make the decision about what they want to try and go in that direction. But
Yeah, I can speak to how that's gone with the 10 sites that we've been working with. We have developed just a bit of a planning tool for the community entity to look at when you go to Steve's definition of youth homelessness and those three pockets of primary, tertiary, where to do that system mapping. Where are you already excelling? Where is a gap in your community? And based on not only where we're excelling and continue to work in that space, but to ensure that we're touching all three points. So a community, again, it'll depend on your capacity, but I think the awareness is always key to keep in mind of which spaces and which interventions are in that definition and happening. A lot of communities said this project revitalized that conversation for them because they were spending a lot of time in one space and excelling really well, but didn't realize that they had maybe left a little bit of gap in some of the other spaces. And again, it always comes down to capacity. Hope that helps. Another question, I'm wondering, any health units have been connected to this work, or is it primary social services?
Do you want to answer that? I can speak to like at a higher level. If we want to solve youth homelessness, we have to get beyond imagining that the youth homelessness sector is going to be responsible for everything. So other public institutions have to be at the table, and at the community level, that's going to be part of the work. People get discharged from inpatient care in hospitals. They get discharged into homelessness. There are other ways of thinking about that, but how do we help people get the right kind of supports they need? This is a case management question through preventive interventions. So healthcare is like right in there, as is thinking about what's the role of child protection or the criminal justice system, or education. These public systems have to be part of the solution.
And I wanted to add that Dr. Cheryl Forchuk in London, Ontario, one of our Making the Shift projects that we invested in was a piece of work that she's done around a model of supporting young people transitioning from inpatient care, and the results were really strong. So you can find that in the research summaries that Steph linked to.
If I could add one more place to look, Washington State in the United States has done some really amazing things in terms of passing legislation with funding to make sure that people aren't discharged from these public systems into homelessness. So there's different places doing different things, but it's definitely front of mind. Tanya and Karen, did this come up with the community entities?
Yeah, and I think that goes back to that capacity question of whose responsibility as well. Many saw that this could be a primary healthcare concern. So again, making sure all the folks are at the table that are ultimately, to your point, exiting youth into homelessness and have that accountability in those spaces. But again, it's really around that system mapping and ensuring that all folks are at the table and had that shared understanding of what youth prevention is. So I think that's going back to what the definition is, how youth end up in homelessness, and then getting upstream and involving those sectors and systems, which leads well to the next question around Sandy. Around group homes. She said, extremely high risk youth component in our group homes. I look forward to seeing what we might implement, as sadly some of our youth are headed towards homelessness. Is there a broader plan in place to provide this info directly to our local schools? So as Steve had mentioned, 2 of our interventions are specifically school-based because of that data around when people first experience homelessness. So naturally, a lot of our youth were in school when that took place. So we are doing our best to work with school boards. We have resources within there, Sandy, around how to connect with local school boards to let them know what's in it for them, if they will. So not only will they support solving youth homelessness, but these programs support their goals of academics and school disengagement as well. So we do spend a lot of time supporting communities with that school board conversation. I think there's probably folks on here that are already doing that work. And if you'd like to reach out, I'm happy to share those resources with you and how we've gone breaking or kicking in that door with local school boards for sure.
Right. And I think
Definitely. Good description.
I think
right. So
when
don't
we think about that,
feel like if it's not working for you, don't give up. That's my advice. Yeah.
but if we think about the young people who are having those early experiences of homelessness, and often they're in group homes and other contexts, schools can play a key role because one thing we know is that, every young person who experiences homelessness was in school once. And it's very possible that a teacher or a counselor, somebody knew something was wrong, but didn't know what to do. And so the more we engage those kind of public systems, that's where young people are until they drop out. The more we can get at the under 16s who might be vulnerable to being trafficked if they're in a group home or another place. So the connection with schools and other public systems, they all have to articulate. And that can take time because other public systems may not see the prevention of youth homelessness as their thing. So in getting schools on board, once we help them get by the idea, are you asking us to do a whole bunch of new stuff? Now we have to be social workers and this kind of stuff. If you paint the picture that this is going to help you, if your focus is on attachment to education and student success and well-being, this will help get there for those young people who are at risk of homelessness. So I remember one of our colleagues who was an educator, we were saying all this in a presentation. He goes, this is really good. This is helpful, right? So that's the thing. Rather than imagine when you're engaging in other public systems that you're going to put more burden on them, you need to explain that it's going to be actually make your life easier and better outcomes for the people that you're caring for.
And just another note, as we went to the 10 communities, as the CE was the driver of those trainings and they knew they needed systems in the room, they invited those folks. So we did have educators in the room that learned about the models as well, and that will continue planning with the communities. So I think that's a really big first step too. Sorry, get back to the chat. Curious about the Housing First for Youth. What are the key factors that distinguish it from other models for housing? What makes it much more effective and successful?
I think there are several elements of it. One is like as a Housing First program, it involves addressing housing stabilization, but also the wraparound supports. What makes it more appropriate for young people than a regular Housing First program is that Housing First for Youth the case management, the housing options, how we think about supports is different, right? Because we're talking about young people. And the starting place for that is, you know, all young people need help growing up and growing into adulthood. And so how can Housing First do that? So if a place to start in thinking about Housing First for Youth is to look at the core principles of it, so access to housing with no conditions, right? You have to go to school, or, you can't be drinking or anything like that. Young people need to be driving the bus with the case managers walking beside them. We need a positive youth development perspective. So rather than looking at what's wrong with young people, let's build on their strengths. We need to help them overcome social exclusion. So help them find their communities and their activities and things that they believe in. And finally, really importantly, the enhancing family and natural supports work is there. Has to be really key, built in. Every young person should be offered it. Not everyone will go for it, but most will. And if you do all of that, along with these non-negotiables, right, you'll get somewhere. So one of those non-negotiables is no time limits. My kids did not have a time limit when it was like, okay, now you have to leave. Let's build around what's normative for young people. And so the no time limits. And the other thing for service providers, you need to have caseloads that are small. Otherwise, you're just putting out fires. So we recommend between 7 and 10 young people per case manager. And if you're worried that, like, well, if we just let them stay there forever, we're going to run out of spaces. And we find that it's about between 2 and 2.5 years that young people stay engaged. They make the choice when they're done. And they should have the opportunity to go back home just like any other person, or go back into the program. No young person wants to be in a program for the rest of their life. So they are going to exit at some point. And our task is to set them up for that success. And Karen, that's all in your course, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say, and to highlight the toolkit.
And the toolkit. It's all, there's lots of stuff.
The core principle section, everything Steve mentioned is in there. So all the model designs are built on those core principles. So we have great activities, maybe not in the toolkit, but around how you can put each one of those principles in each one of the models to support your teams and understanding what that work looks like for them. Steph, do you have any more questions that popped up for you?
There's a few more in the Q&A.
Oh.
They're kind of jumping all over the place, so it's hard to keep.
I saw somebody asking about tips for working with landlords, and I did want to just flag or mention that we have, or are in the process of, I'm not sure in terms, we have a new training, but we also have a program model. We worked with a community in Peel region in Ontario, which has a specific model for youth, which is, it's somewhat Housing First for Youth, but they've also customized their model called Bridge of Hope. So you can look at that. There's a program model guide and a training for Black youth primarily, and it's a landlord engagement model. So really, really interesting work that they're doing. So for that person that was asking about landlords,
That's a great program you're referring to. And I think that, here's the really successful landlord engagement involves this, building a relationship with the landlord. Because here's the thing, many landlords are going to have tenants whose characteristics are not that different than the young person in the Housing First for Youth program. But the difference is the Housing First for Youth program, or a young person in Housing First for Youth, comes with supports. And so for landlords, it's often like, what do you mean? If they break something, someone's going to come and fix it? And it's like, yes, so that's actually very attractive to a lot of landlords, because they, as I say, they have lots of tenants who may, have their own issues or trouble. So there's lots of really good examples of how to do that. And some are in the kit there, and it can work. It can work. And it's really essential.
Other questions are faith community involvement and library involvement as well. Yeah, within those core principles, for sure, there's a community connection, social inclusion aspect. So again, the youth drive the work within all this model. So if the faith community, or of course, library has wonderful resources for every community. So what does that look like in case management? There are some of our organizations that definitely have faith involvement and supports attached to them, and cultural connections. So I think, again, when you look at your systems mapping and the resources involved within your community, you definitely want to look at both of these folks.
They can also be really important referral points into the programs as well.
Yeah, when we were in St. John's, one of the case managers said, I'd never been to all the churches in St. John's, but I have 2 youth that are seeking spiritual connection. So we've gone to all the church open houses, and I had no idea how beautiful my own community was. So it was really nice, really nice for the worker and the youth. Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
I know we're running time. Sorry, I think you unmuted me now, and I thank you so much. I was trying with all my might. I love you guys, and I thank you. I work for a shelter, and we are housing first as of 3 years ago. My position is community outreach manager, and it's strictly prevention. And right. I said for myself to be successful, it would start in utero.
Yeah.
But however, my kiddos are 14 to 24, and I just want to just share quickly what has truly helped me. I'm in schools as well. We have a wonderful community where there's the police officers and the MCERT, on board, paramedics, all of those. But I'm also trained in the Rent Smart education. That's what helped me raise my hand, right? With the landlord tenant. And, I teach the kiddos, right? Like I say to staff in the shelter, do the role playing. The kids love that. They love to engage. Let one of the kids be landlord, let one of them be the tenant, and ask the questions with each other, right? And they engage, and they love that.
That's great.
Yeah, and also get trained in mediation, conflict resolution, and it really helps with family reunification.
Yeah.
It's just I love what I do, and thank you, Stephen, for pointing out the caseload.
Right.
I can not burn out. I can burn out. I'm old, but 7 to 8 kiddos, manageable.
Absolutely.
I can't. We can. Yeah.
That's great.
Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Anne. It's kind. Another question, specific situations for youth newcomers. Each of our trainings definitely have sections within cultural humility and understanding. We know all our workers can't speak every language that's needed in their community or understand every culture, but how do we approach our youth, and knowing that they're the leaders in those choices, and making sure that our each one of our programs has access to all the resources within the community. Again, not every worker can know all those things, but we are seeing definitely a large increase in our newcomer populations, and it doesn't matter which province we go to. That is a commonality that is coming out, is how do we do the best work for newcomer youth. So happy to talk further about that, but definitely something that's on our radar and is in each of the models.
Yeah, it's important. It's a reality now, right? I think young people who are newcomers, the causes of their experience of homelessness may be quite different than for young people who aren't newcomers. There may not be there may or may not be strained relations with parents and caregivers. There's complexity in terms of like when people moved to Canada, that kind of thing. But what it does mean is for the case managers and shelter workers, that kind of thing, they now have to learn about settlement supports. And so there's this is a new thing to learn, but it's important. And so, but it's there, can't ignore it. And a challenge for a lot of newcomer youth is in terms of dealing with their family, like family and natural supports. There's often a sense of shame and, they don't want their families to know they came and they're living in a shelter, right? And so that's a whole other kind of issue. So it's important work.
Yeah, and the newcomer youth in schools, and I don't probably have to tell this group that the amount of pressure that those youth, they're supporting the family, like with translation and cultural awareness and new Canadian procedures and all those things while trying to go to school. So I think a lot of the school-based programs have given a lot of support to those youth and families. And again, whichever, do find out who is the person in your community that is receiving that IRCC supports and make sure that you're working with them. Lots of times the tables don't seem to have that or they're a one-off after the fact, after the planning is done. So I do encourage you to make sure that you have the immigrant refugee services providers at your table as well during your system planning. And Steph told me that's our last question. Throw her under the bus.
Excuse me.
Yeah. So thank you so much for being with us today. I hope this was helpful. I hope that our analytics show that the toolkit just skyrockets with hits over the next couple of weeks. Do reach out if you have any questions. We're here to support you as you continue this important work.